Hey guys, today I'm talking about fishing a Ned rig in deep water. I know a lot of times when we're talking about fishing any kind of Ned style bait, predominantly the guys that kind of made this popular fishing it 10 foot or less. But I've kind of started to experiment with fishing this guy in 15, 20, 30, as deep as 50 foot at home. And I wanted to kind of walk you through the way I like to fish it, what you need to look for when you're going to try to fish a Ned rig in deeper water. This is something I've been doing up here for smallmouth this week, and it's fun. I've always done it for spotted bass, and pretty much my setup's the same. I get a little different with my colors with smallmouth versus spotted bass. But I'm going to show you some things that I've learned that I think have helped me a little bit when it comes to deep water Ned rigging. And I'm calling deep water 15 foot or deeper. So for starters, you can fish a Ned rig vertically right up under the boat. What we like to call the popular term is video game fishing. Done that in tournaments, but anything probably under 20 foot, I would suggest that you do, I just call it like flipping it out, like just making these little flips like that, 20, 30 foot out from the boat, let it hit the bottom, and kind of use your trolling motor or the wind to kind of drag the bait along the bottom. The biggest thing that you can do is going to help you with deep water Ned rig fishing is maintaining bottom contact. That's super important. So everything that I tell you on this video is going to be about maintaining that bottom contact. The equipment that I use, the line size, the line type, the rods, the reels, the weight of the bait is all centered around keeping it on the bottom, especially when you're fishing for smallmouth. Bottom contact most of the time is a big deal. If you can't keep it on the bottom, a lot of times you just don't get bit. A lot of the things that these smallmouth are eating that I'm catching are little crawfish. They're feeding on crawfish that are nestled down in the grass, nestled down in the rocks. Sometimes, you know, typically if you're fishing around grass or rocks, it's usually crawfish. For the most, crawfish or perch. If you're fishing on sandy or clean spots, something where there's a lot of current oriented bite, most of the time it's going to be like a bait fish bite, alewives, shad, whatever the forage fish is on your body of water. But the ones that I'm catching today, I think they're feeding on perch and they're feeding on shad forage. What that is, and crawfish, I'm sorry. Let's talk about the baits. I'm using a green pumpkin Z-Man TRD. Super fancy, right? The TRD stands for turd. They didn't want to say the Z-Man turd because it's what it looks like, it's a goose turd. This is a Z-Man green pumpkin. That's for whatever reason, that works best for me for smallmouth. When I start fishing for spotted bass, I can experiment with colors and do all kind of wacky and crazy things. But it's something about that little green pumpkin. And I think it's the hue and the green pumpkin of Z-Man's. It's really dark. It's a dark green pumpkin. It's a green pumpkin with a black flake in it, obviously. They really like that color. That's what I've found to be most productive. I almost always use a 1/5 ounce Ned head. I prefer the finesse shrooms, the original finesse shrooms hook. People tell me all the time, well, I don't like the finesse shrooms, I like the Ned locks because it's got a thicker gauge wire hook. I bend the hook out on the finesse shrooms. Listen, I don't have that problem. If you got the right rod and the right line and you're not trying to be an incredible Hulk when you're hooked in the bass, you're not going to bend out this metal hook with nylon line. It's not going to happen, okay? So I use the finesse shrooms hook. Something that I found out this week after a lot of failures with using this particular setup, 1/5 ounce green pumpkin TRD finesse shrooms head. I think you're going to be better off with straight fluorocarbon on this setup. I don't know what it is, but especially if you're fishing for a species that loves to jump, i.e. small jaws, smallmouth. If you're fishing for those fish, they do a lot of jumping. And that compact weight, that close to the hook point, you're gonna lose some fish with a braided fluorocarbon setup. I don't have as much problem with them with spotted bass. I don't understand it, but you will lose some fish with it. You don't want to come in here with a big gaping hook either. You're just going to stay hung up and it just looks awkward on the bait. But when I started fishing it deeper and I'm fishing for larger fish, I think I have found that I lose less fish with a straight fluorocarbon setup. I think that little bit of sponginess helps me stay hooked up better. If you don't believe that, you ain't got to. I'm not trying to prove it to you. I'm telling you what's worked best for me. I don't need you to comment and tell me why that's wrong. All I'm telling you is that's what works best for me, and that's what what I'm using. 8 or 10 pound test line, fluorocarbon, straight fluorocarbon, all the way through the reel, all the way to the connection knot is what I'm going to be using. Another thing that I like to do, fishing a Ned, especially in deep water. Really, this is only for deep water. Straight fluorocarbon. I mean, from the connection knot all the way to the reel. No braid at all. Don't like braid. Think about it. Braid is working against you a little bit in this situation. We talked about the hookup ratio. I feel, in my opinion, I feel is better. The fact is, braided line floats. The fact is, braided line is super light. And when I'm making little flips, little casts out here, especially if it's windy, like that, the braided line is light, the wind catches it, and it does pull your bait. It manipulates your bait for you, and I can't maintain bottom contact. Remember, everything, if you can keep bottom contact more, the better off you are. I go straight fluorocarbon. It's a heavier line, it stays down in the water, and it doesn't give the wind the opportunity to take my bait somewhere I don't want it. So I've been using straight fluorocarbon. You can use 8 pound tests, 10 pound tests. Probably don't go much above 10 pound tests because it's just hard to manage on a spinning reel. But 6 or 8 is probably going to be the sweet spot for that. I feel like you stay hooked up better, you keep the bait on the bottom better, you're gonna catch more fish that way. It's just bottom line, you're gonna catch more fish. Hook set needs to be a little bit more forceful with fluorocarbon, obviously, because there's a little bit of sponginess there. But I really feel like that's my go-to setup for this style of fishing. I'm going to use the same rod and reel that I use for just about every other finesse technique. This is my signature 7'1" medium heavy favorite 6-stick, my signature series. If you watched any of my videos, I'll tell you some of the things that I changed on the 6-stick series. Bigger guides, changed the grip, changed the reel seat, and took a few guides out. Taking the guide out changed the power of the rod, it changed the action of it, made it a little bit more forgiving. Changed the reel seat so my reel stays in the same spot at all times. I added a keeper for when you're fishing a drop shot or whatever you want to do. You can secure it and don't have a whole bunch of problems in your rod locker, your car, your truck, wherever you keep your rods and equipment. And the bigger guys also help with union knots when you're using braided fluorocarbon. So the 6-stick by far was my favorite series from Favorite, and I just kind of try to make this rod level up a little bit. The new Favorite B-Lat 6-stick. So that's what I'm using. 7'1", 3000 series spinning reel with 8 pound test fluorocarbon, and it's just simple as that. It's easy peasy. You know what? I need to talk to you about how to retrieve it. All right, show you like what does it look like. I got all the equipment, Brian. I got all the baits. What does it look like? Let's get up on the front deck. I'll show you exactly what it looks like to fish a Ned in deeper water. I'm out here in about 17 right now, and I'm actually kind of dragging this drop shot. It's a long bar out through here, and I'm just kind of flipping it out behind the boat. Not making a long cast because you don't have control over the bait the longer the cast is. So I'm really just flipping it right out the back, just like that, and 30 foot of line out. I'll let it hit the bottom. It's kind of like just a controlled drift is all it is. And I'll shake it a little bit. Sometimes I'll fish it right under the boat. In 17, like I said, less than 20 foot, I don't really care to fish vertically. If it's really rough out, the boat's bobbing and weaving, you can really just kind of hold it and it'll do everything you need it to do. But it's fairly slick today, so I'm just feathering it with the rod tip every once in a while. Sometimes if I feel like I'm getting in some good stuff, like some good rock and all, I'll actually feed it a little line. But you definitely pay attention. You can learn a lot about where you're fishing by dragging just a TRD around like this, because it's on the bottom. You'll tell where there's little hard spots. You can tell if there's grass down there. You can tell if it's just straight sand. That's another thing that fish like. They like just a slick sandy spot sometimes. You can tell a lot about the area you're fishing by just dragging around on the bottom like that. Just pay attention. It's not just an aimless drag. It may seem like I'm just aimlessly dragging this thing around, but I'm paying attention to what the bottom feels like. I'm paying attention to sometimes you'll snag some shells or something like that, and that's information that all can help you know what colors to use, know what baits, what sizes, what the fish are feeding on. A lot of times, this is a smallmouth body of water here. I don't like fishing somewhere where I'm not getting perch bites, rock bass bites. Even down there in sometimes as deep as 20 foot of water, you'll feel the rock bass pecking at it. And you know, I like that because you know who eats rock bass? Smallmouth. And if you got rock bass, chances are small jaws is down there looking around and shopping for victims. It's down there being a predator. Wow, that was a bite. Holy smokes. God, he just hit it so hard. Man, catching a smallmouth deep on a Ned rig, I'm telling you, that's a lot of fun. It's very simple. You don't have to work hard with this. Let's see if I can even get this thing out. Look, can you see that? Look at that. I think he wanted it. I don't know what they think that thing is, what they think the TRD is. But it's that's a special little bait. Very simple. Anybody can fish it. Just dragging it around out here in 15 to 17 foot of water today. It's a lot of fun. That's a good. I think that's a 3 3/4 pushing 4 pound smallmouth. Just this is like my favorite species of fish, just by the way they look. I'm gonna go ahead and get this guy back in the water. Dude, that's special. That will never get old to me, catching smallmouth out here a little deeper. It's super simple, folks. I know fishing deep water can sometimes be intimidating, but mostly because you can't see what you're doing. Make it easy on yourself. Just get somewhere right outside of where you know fish should be spawning or where they should go to spawn. Step right outside of that area. Get in 15, 17 foot of water and start drifting around. I promise you, you're gonna catch some fish, especially when you use this Ned rig. The baits and the equipment that I'm using today, you can find everything that I talked about on this video at shopblat.com. Shopblat.com. I got this particular bait, the jig head that I'm using, and even the fishing line that you see here. I'll get you all set up so you can catch fish like this too.